حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم أما بعد. So inshallah, the plan for the next 4 weeks, we have 4 sessions, is to go through the events of the hereafter. Um, with this, I had prepared some notes that I wanted to share with you guys, some lecture notes. They're still not done yet, so once they're done, inshallah, next week, I'll give you guys the notes. About 4 or 5 pages of just laying out kind of the structure of how we're going to go through things. But to briefly explain, the hereafter can be looked at in different phases. Imam al-Haddad, rahimahullah ta'ala, one of the great mystics of our past, he said that man has 5 journeys, 5 stages. The first is before he's born, right? So this is when he's not even a thing. No one knows who he is. He's not born yet, so he's in the realm of souls. And then the second stage is the dunya, where a person lives in this world. He explains how the word dunya comes from the word dani'a, and dani'a means lowly, right? Because this world is a lowly life. It's finite. It doesn't have actually any value. And then the third stage is the barzakh. The barzakh, he calls this the intermediate stage between this world and the next, the life of the grave, the life after dying. The fourth stage is qiyamah itself. So the day of qiyamah is one stage, and the final stage is eternality, either heaven or hell. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to enter paradise, ameen. That's the 5 stages that he talks about. Now we're not going to talk about stage 1 or stage 2 because we're in stage 2. But our goal is to talk about stage 3, 4, 5, right? What happens when a person is nearing death? What happens when he's died? What happens in the grave? What happens on Qiyamah? And what happens when he goes to Jannah or Jahannam? Now, one discussion that does come up that's very important is the signs of the hour, Ashrat al-Sa'ah. We're not going to talk about that. That deserves a whole separate series, multiple sessions of what are the signs of the hereafter. There are innumerous signs, dozens. Some ulama count up to 85 or more signs of the Qiyamah. And if you were to go through all of them, it would just take too long. But it only takes a person just to look around the world, look at the world around them, and to realize we're in the end of times. There's no doubt. The amount of immorality, the amount of bihayai, the amount of people that are just have lost all ethics. It's clear that we're in the end of times. Nobody cares about religion. Nobody cares about morality. And so everything has become a commodification. There's so many things we can talk about. Even though we haven't seen Dajjal yet, may Allah protect us and allow us to go through the struggle if we have to go through it. But all the minor signs definitely are there. May Allah protect. So that's a separate discussion. We'll mention that very briefly. Our main goal is what happens from death onwards, inshallah. So the only few caveats I will give before we start, inshallah, I'll have the lecture notes ready. So most of the information will be on that. We can follow along. And if you're one to register, feel free to go online and register at the GIC website. The second thing, inshallah, is that we'll try to do a mix of understanding the content in the hadith, but what I want us to do is I want us to really imagine what's happening to the person. There's no point in us listening if we're just simply going to memorize it and tell somebody else. The goal is to instill. And so we have to really, in the way we do this, is we imagine ourselves in the same situation. So when you're hearing about what happens at the grave, you have to imagine yourself in the grave. You have to imagine yourself receiving what's happening to the person in the grave. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that comes from one of the Sahaba who says that every time I see a janazah, لو أني أكون كما أكون محل حال من أهل الثلاث. He said, وما شهدت جنازة قط. He said, I never witnessed a single janazah except that while I was at the janazah, I would imagine myself in his situation. Right? I would imagine myself being washed. I would imagine myself being buried. And he's like, that's what brings the effect. When you go visit the graveyard, the goal isn't to go to the graveyard and just say, Assalamu alaikum and go away. The goal is to think about that today they're here and tomorrow I'm going to be there. Right? And that's the remembrance. That's what we call remembering death again and again and again. So that's the second request that I have, inshallah. If we can do that, that's going to have an impact upon me. I was reading Imam Ghazali yesterday in preparation of this. And I read it one time and it had an impact, but then I really sat there and looked at those 2 paragraphs and I tried imagining it and I had to close the book because of how scary it was. I put the book away, I can't touch this right now. Because it hits the heart when you think about yourself in that situation on Qiyamah. So that's where the impact's gonna come. Now, why do we remember death? What is the point? The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, أَكْثِرُوا ذِكْرَ هَذِمَ اللَّذَّاتِ الْمَوْتِ. Frequent your remembrance of the destroyer of pleasures, death. Why? Because it realizes the perspective. Right? When you remember that all of this dunya and all of its glamour, all of its money, all of its wealth will end. That puts meaning into life, puts meaning into perspective. Otherwise, if you were to live forever, then what's the point? Why be a good person? Why go out of your way to make an impact? Why do good deeds if you're going to live forever? There's always going to be time. And so what death does is that death gives you a perspective. Death gives you a perspective on that this world will end. And you have to make the most of it. And not only will this world end, this world will determine what happens in the next. And so this test is the test of your life itself. If it was not to end, then what would be the point? Now, second thing, we also believe, part of our aqeedah is that death is not the end of the journey. Death is simply a transition to the next life. This is important. Many atheists, they believe what we call the blackout, meaning when a person dies, everything goes black and that's it. There's nothing else afterwards. It's a very common atheist trope. That also has no meaning, because if we're all going to die and it's going to go black, then why do anything? Why do good deeds? Why go out of your way to be a good person? Why not just have fun in the dunya? Because after 65, 75, 85, 100 years, whenever the time comes, whenever you're in the grave, it's just going to be black. Right? But we believe that there's a life afterwards because that's the real life. We believe that this world is simply Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created it, that's in a particular universe. Once we go to the next world, those veils are lifted. Now you see the angels. Now you see the jinnat. Now you see different things. But at that point, it's too late. Right? Because if a person were to see that reality and then believe, it takes out the test altogether. The test is, do you believe without seeing? Do you believe without knowing? Imam Razi, one of the great mufassirun and theologians, he explains that the whole test of iman is that a person believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, without it being apparent. If Allah wanted to, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have made it very clear that He exists, right? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to, He could have sent someone that there is no doubt that He exists. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it was part of the test that you're supposed to think about the universe and come to God's existence. You're supposed to think about the world and say, there's no way this can exist without a creator, right? It just takes what? A few moments of reflection. And those that don't do it, they're just simply immersed in the dunya. May Allah protect us. And so that's the second thing. Death is a transition into the next life. So now what happens? The first thing is that when a person is nearing death, there are a few discussions. We're not going to discuss the fiqh, because there are fiqh discussions, for example, inheritance, there's discussions of debts, etc. But the general tartib is that when a person passes away, the first expense is their funeral, the second expense is their debts, and the third thing is their inheritance. The third thing is their will, and the fourth thing is inheritance. That's the general tartib. So if anyone has it, may Allah protect us, but has situations, you can discuss with the imam or any other ulama. So when a person is nearing death, what's recommended, we're going to discuss what's recommended for us and what happens to the deceased. When we're visiting somebody that's dying, that's passing away, we have a few things as recommended. First and foremost is at-talqeen. What is talqeen? Talqeen is where we recite the shahada with them. Now be very careful here. Do not command him to do the shahada. Why? Because if he says no, then that's a problem. Because he's denying the shahada. And so instead of commanding him towards the shahada, we recite it all together, slowly. Recite the shahada. Why? Because the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ says that if a person dies with the shahada on their tongue, we hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has good for them. That's a good sign, right? It's a good sign that they're going to a good place. If they die with the shahada, the kalima on their tongue. So when we're visiting someone who's about to pass away or in the last moments, do the talqeen, recite the shahada. It's good for yourself, obviously, dhikr. But secondly, it encourages the deceased to keep going. That's the first point. The second point is the deceased should pass away what we call husnul dhann billah. He should die having hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a narration that comes from one of the great mystics, or one of the great, Salaf, Wathila. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him. So one time he went to a person, and this person was on his deathbed. And he asked him, and he said, Ma husnul dhann bik billah. What do you think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What is your hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And this person responds and he says that my sins have grieved me. I'm immersed in grief and sorrow because of my sins. I fear for myself because of my sins. Right? I have that fear, legitimate fear. But at the same time, I believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ar-Rahman. And that's the balanced approach. That's the balanced approach. A person should not be on either side. They shouldn't be on the complete opposite side where they live in fear that Allah is going to punish me, Allah's going to. But yes, the punishment is there. But a person cannot also live in the exact opposite stream of Allah is Ghafoor Rahim. I can do whatever I want, Allah will forgive me. Right? Imam Ibn al-Qayyim describes insan as a bird. And he says this bird has two wings. One is the fear of Allah, and one is the hope in Allah's mercy. And you have to balance that. Right? For some people, fear might be more impactful than hope. That the fear of Allah's punishment might be what moves them to go praise Allah. They have to utilize that. And for some people, fear might drive them away from Islam. There's many people who grew up with this completely fear narrative. Their entire lives, they were just told Allah's going to punish you, punish you, punish you, punish you, punish you. They left Islam. They're like, what kind of Allah is this? So different people have different approaches. But balance is key. Finding that balance between khawf and raja, fear and hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can't go in either extreme. So the deceased should pass away in that manner. So now what happens to the deceased? As the deceased is going out of this world, the soul is being lifted. Where does the soul exit from? It starts from the feet. So the angel of death will come and he will start extracting the soul from the feet all the way up. Till this point, there is tawbah. A person can still do tawbah at this point until the soul reaches his throat. We call this gharaqul maut. And so many ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ, if you open Riyadh al-Salihin, for example, Imam Nawawi, extensive chapter where he discusses many ahadith that say when a person, as long as he's alive, he can make tawbah until the soul reaches his throat. When gharaqul maut has come. At that point, khalas, it's over. You had your entire life, you had all that time to make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now you want to make tawbah? Like when Fir'aun was once drowning, right, in the sea, and now he says, I believe in Allah. Al-an, as Allah says, now we want to believe? After this many years of calling yourself God, after this many years of dhulm, after this many years of destroying Bani Israel and enslaving them, after this many years of your disobedience and haughtiness, now you realize? And so, tawbah is open all the way till that moment. So now how does the soul come out? There are two scenarios for the good person and the bad person. The fajr, the person who is a transgressor, may Allah protect us, and the person who is a mu'min. Let's discuss the fajr first, it's a little dark, and we'll go to the good side later. One time Ibrahim ﷺ is narrated that he told the angel of death, he said, can you show me what you look like when you're taking the soul of somebody who's a sinner? Can you show me what you look like? The angel of death, Azrael, he said, you can't handle it. He said, Ibrahim, the Prophet of Allah, you can't handle seeing me in that state. Ibrahim said, no, show me. I want to know. I want to see what happens. So he tells Ibrahim a.s. to turn around. Ibrahim a.s. looks away. And then he tells him to turn back. And Ibrahim a.s., as narrated, he sees this tall, dark, black figure with a horrible stench coming from him, and he collapsed on the moment. Ibrahim a.s. fainted, collapsed. When he got up, Malik al-Maut was still there. I mean, he wasn't there to take his life. He was, he's a prophet of Allah. He asked him and he said, like, is this what you, he said, yeah, this is what happens for the people who are the wretched souls. When I'm coming to take them in their life, this is the appearance that I come in. So Ibrahim a.s. said something scary. He said, if a person had spent his entire life in the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the simple sight of that angel will be enough of a punishment for that person. Right? That's where the punishment begins. And so a person who lives that life where they've forgot Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they transgress the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their punishment is beginning from before they even died yet. That's where the punishment's starting now. Because again, you had all this time, what did you do? And so that's the appearance of the angel of death. How is the soul of the Fajr taken out? The narration comes that you can imagine like a branch or a stick that has thorns or spikes that are coming out. And basically, it's a spiritual stick. This is kind of speared into a person, and then his soul is being ripped out piece by piece as the thorns each bring out a little bit, slowly. Why is this so? Is because what happens now, since the soul in the person is seeing the punishment, he wants to stay in the dunya. So he's trying his hardest to stay into this world, because why? He knows if I leave, I don't know what's going to happen to me afterwards. And so this tool is being used to rip out the person's soul because, again, attachment of the world. So this is what's happening to the person. There are two sheets of cloth that are brought, that are black, that have a horrible stench. And there are angels that are surrounding this person as his soul is being taken out, and they're cursing him. They're cursing him constantly. They're doing la'na upon him. Your horrible, wretched soul. He's put into the cloth, and then they begin to raise him towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, as the narration says, when they reach the first heaven, they're stopped. The doors don't open. And a voice comes down and says, you're not allowed up here. Go back. This is not for you. And he's put back, he's put back into the grave eventually. For the righteous person, may Allah make us amongst them, it's quite the opposite. The angel of death presents himself in a very nice manner. White clothes, very beautiful scent. There's angels around him that are making dua for the person, that are doing salam upon the person, that are congratulating him. Now when he's in this state, he will feel the pangs of death. Every person felt the pangs of death. The sakaratul maut, even the Prophet ﷺ himself had to experience the sakaratul maut. And when the ulama mentioned that the sakaratul maut are the most, imagine any pain that you've gone through in your life. The sakarat exceed that. The pangs exceed that. Why? Every single pain that you went through in this world was bodily. Your leg, your arm, your heart, your liver, whatever it may be. It was a bodily effect. What's happening to the soul is only to the soul. And so it exceeds anything you can comprehend. It's pain upon the soul itself. Because again, there's mufaraqa. You're separating the soul from the body. It's been so many years that it's been connected together. And so the pangs of death are very painful. So everyone has to face those anyways. But for this good person, as he's being taken out, the angels are congratulating him. And then two white sheets, cloth are brought, and he's put in between these two cloths. And it's a beautiful smell. And then the ascension begins, where they start going towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as they reach the first heaven, the doors open, right? And all the malaika are lined up, congratulating the person. Welcome. Then second heaven, he keeps going up till he reaches a point where then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I am pleased with this person. Right? And then he comes back down and he's put into the grave. That's the two narratives so far. So a person is taken out of their body, and one of these two scenarios will happen. May Allah keep making dua throughout this entire time. May Allah make us from the people from the righteous side and not from the righteous side. The second thing is now the grave begins. So a person is now, while the body is being washed and while all the procession is happening, the person is not in the body yet. So you could say it's possible that a person is seeing this happen. He's seeing his body being washed. He's seeing his janazah taking place, right? And in that moment, there are either one of two things he's thinking. Number one, he's either happy, alhamdulillah, I moved on to the next life and I'm hoping Allah's mercy, or he is regretful. If I only had one more time, if I only could do one more thing. Now once they get in the grave, as the narration says, the deceased is now, his soul reconnects with the body in the grave. And he can hear the footsteps of people that have just buried him. Now, as the footsteps go on, the last set of footsteps has disappeared. Two angels now appear, Munkar and Nakir. I have a beautiful long narration. I'll go through portions of it. Munkar and Nakir now come. And Munkar and Nakir are now going to ask you the most important and difficult three questions of your existence. Yeah. But before that happens, the grave squeezes a person. Right? So this is what the grave does for every single person, is that the grave squeezes the person and lets go. Now, if it's a good person, it'll feel like a warm hug. Right? Because the grave is welcoming you. The grave is obviously, the earth is one of Allah's creation. So as a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it feels honored. The righteous person has now come in me, right? And so it's going to embrace you. But for the wretched soul, what is the grave doing? It's squeezing you because it hates you. It doesn't want you to be in there. The narrations say that a person's ribs will overlap because of how much it squeezed, the intensity. But obviously, depending upon the person, the perception is different. One thing you'll notice now moving forward is that time is very different in this part because we move beyond the physical world. Right? Time is not normal. It's not 24 hours, and we move beyond the physical world. So Munkar and Nakir now come. Now you can imagine yourself that a person has been buried now. They just saw their own ghusl, they saw their janazah, they saw their loved ones crying. Now they're placed in the grave. And they can hear the footsteps of people that are walking away. Right? It's getting lonelier. And the last person walks away. Now it's just you. It's just you in the darkness of the grave, and two angels now appear. Munkar and Nakir come, and their job is to ask you three questions. Man Rabbuk, ma dinuk, man nabiyyuk. Who is your Lord? What is your religion? Who is your prophet? Okay. The aql, the intellect, has no play in this time. No matter how smart you were, no matter what your IQ was, no matter how intellectual, PhD, 3 PhD, doesn't matter. That doesn't work. On that day, the heart will speak. And so when he's asked, who is your Lord? The heart will respond and say, I worship this such and such God. What is your deen? The person who's Muslim will say, I accepted Islam. The person who's not, I was a Christian, I was this, I was that, whatever he may be, right? I was an atheist. Now, regarding the last question, there's two understandings from the ulama. One group of ulama, they say that you will simply be asked, who's your prophet? Who's your leader? And either you will say the Prophet ﷺ, or the person who followed somebody else, he'll say, I followed, John the Baptist, or, fulan person or fulan person. Another narration, which is the minority opinion, is that a small little, you could think about like a picture. Again, we don't know the reality of it, but ulama will say some sort of picture will be presented of the Prophet ﷺ, and we'll say, who is this man? Many ulama prefer the first opinion because many people haven't seen the Prophet ﷺ, and part of the karama is that you believe in the Prophet ﷺ without seeing him. There's a hadith, one time the Prophet ﷺ, he was sitting with the companions, and he said that I wish I could see my brothers. And the Sahaba said, Ya Rasulullah, are we not your brothers? Did we not fight the battles with you? Were we not there at every single moment? And he will say, no, بل أنتم أصحابي وإخوان الذين لم يأتوا من بعد. You are my companions, but my brothers are those that will come after me, and they will believe in me without seeing me. And so, the first opinion, Allah Ta'ala Alam, seems to make more sense in this regard. So now what the three answers have different responses. What's narrated is that Munkar and Nakir asks a person, let's go for the good guy. He answers, my Lord is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my deen is Islam. What time is it? Oh man. My deen is Islam, my prophet is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what it said that even in that situation, Munkar and Nakir are still going to scold him. They're still going to get mad at him a little bit. But it said that's the last musibah he will face. That's the last thing he will ever have to hear from somebody. Munkar and Nakir are still going to give him a scolding. They're going to get mad at him. But that'll be the last thing he will face in the riwayah. Because from then on, it's just bliss. However, for the person who gets the questions wrong, it said that Munkar and Nakir will beat him. And he will scream such screams that all of creation is hearing it except insan and jinn, because obviously they're veils. So other creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are hearing this person getting beat in the grave because he could not respond to the answers. The third step that happens is the windows of Jannah and Jahannam. For the good person, may Allah make us amongst them, the first thing that happens is a window of Jahannam is opened. And he's told that this is where you would have been if you had not obeyed Allah's commands. And then it's closed. And then a window of Jannah is open, and he says, now this is your place because of what you did. You followed Allah's commandments, you followed Islam, the deen, the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And so the person will say out of excitement, Ya Allah, bring qiyamah right now. Just start it right now. I'm ready. Let's just do it. Let's get it done. Because he knows I'm going to the right place. Ulama say from this that one of the ibaras is that every single person will at least have to see Jahannam. Right? Every single person will have to at least look at Jahannam. And that's a punishment in and of itself. So every single person will have to take one look. Now for the other person, may Allah protect us, the window of Jannah will be opened first. And he will take a look. And it will be told to him, this is what you could have had. You could have been here. You could have enjoyed all of this. This could have been all of yours. But you forgot Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You forgot the command of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You followed your shahawat. That door is closed. And then a window of Jahannam is opened. And he said, this is where you're going to go. This is where your place is. And so what does he say? He said, Ya Allah, don't bring qiyamah. Keep it away, right? Because again, he knows if qiyamah comes, this is where I'm going. And again, as we know, again, I mentioned the caveat of time, because narrations say that for the good person, he will wake up on qiyamah and he'll be like, it's only been a few days. It's been a day or so in the grave, because time is different. And so for this person now, the torment of wait is the worst thing for him. He's waiting for doom. He's waiting for Jahannam, right? And he wants to do anything, but he can't. One important thing is that in this stage, in the barzakh, the people in the grave can receive rewards from us that are living here. If you read Quran on behalf of somebody, you give sadaqah on behalf of somebody, you do some ibadah with the intention that may Allah give the reward to this person. So their own actions have stopped, except like sadaqah jariyah and those kind of things. But they can still receive various things. And so we should make a habit, if we have, deceased ones or loved ones that have passed away, that every now and then, read some Quran, Ya Allah, make niyyah that the reward, We're not making, dua to them, but the reward of this goes to that person, Now, in the grave, there are certain intercessors that will come. For example, into the grave, we have Surah Mulk. Our hadith comes to the Prophet that Surah Mulk will come into the person and will protect them from the punishment of the grave. And so we should make a habit of reading Surah Mulk every now and then, because these are things that will come and intercede for a person. The torment of the grave is two things. Number one is loneliness, and number two, it's regret. It's loneliness from everything and everyone else. It's just you. And the second thing is the regret of what you missed out. Even the good people are regretful. Why are they regretful? The regret of the mu'minun is, I wish I did more. Right? It's a good regret. Right? They're saved. But the regret is, I got this much. I wish I did more dhikr so I could get more from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's what and obviously for the other side, that person is just regretful because he says, I wish I could go back and change my ways. I wish I could go back and do something else. And this is the life of the grave, the barzakh. With very many details, we don't have time to go through all of them. But one time the Prophet ﷺ, he was passing by. There are many punishments that will begin in the grave. For example, the Prophet ﷺ mentions in a hadith that he was passing by, him and the Sahaba are passing by a grave, and they heard shouting. They heard someone yelling from the grave. And so when the Sahaba inquired, the Prophet ﷺ said that this person was not careful of his urine when he was using the restroom. And so the ulama explained that since he wasn't careful, he was very careless, that urine obviously made his salah invalid. He wasn't pure, his clothes weren't pure, and so because of that, now he's being punished. And so the grave has various different punishments that are happening for different people. May Allah protect us. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. This will go on till Yawm al-Qiyamah. The grave, my brothers and sisters, is the qiyamah for every single person. Every person has a personal qiyamah, and there is the qiyamah. The personal qiyamah is when you die. And when that happens, right, when that mufaraqah happens, your qiyam has occurred. Because again, the punishment has begun or the reward has begun, either or. From the moment you're about to die, the way the angel of death comes to receive you, you already know. And then the real qiyamah will happen whenever the day of qiyamah comes. May Allah protect us and allow us to have a good muhasabah. Ameen. We'll talk about that next week moving forward, inshallah. What time is it? Okay. We'll end off, inshallah, in this. Jazakallah khair for listening, inshallah. One thing that we need to take ibarah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and allow us, is to make dua for protection from these. One dua we should make every single day, and especially in the month of Ramadan, is Ya Allah, protect us from the punishment of the grave. Ya Allah, first and foremost, Ya Allah, give us what we call husnul khatima, a good end. When we die on the kalima of la ilaha illallah. That's a dua we should make every single day. How many people do we know? Not that we know, how many people have been mentioned in our own turath? They lived in their entire lives in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but right at the end, Allah took tawfiq from them. Right at the end. You have so many incidents. We were just reading one the other day from Bani Israel, the person who spent his entire life in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a great zahid. But right at the end, he made one mistake. And he was cursed to hell because of that. And so there is no guarantee. As long as you're in this life, there is no guarantee. There is no time to sit back and put our feet on the table and say, I'm good. Till the moment the angel of death doesn't come in. We ask Allah, He allows the angel to come in a good sense. Ameen. There is no guarantee. Even the Sahaba, subhanAllah, there's a hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala an. He was in his 90s. Abu Hurairah, the great companion who narrated the most ahadith, 5,600 plus, 5,300 plus, apologies. When he was in his 90s, he said, I fear falling into haram for myself. And so if a sahabi who's in his 90s, right, and he was talking about zina, what is the state of our day and age? And so there is no guarantee for either. And it goes the opposite way too. Somebody has spent their entire life away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who are you and I to say he's going to Jannah? Allah can't forgive him. Allah can't make him Muslim last moment. How many people do we have the hadith, beautiful incident from the man from Bani Israel. Killed 100 people. 99, then he killed the scholar, the rabbi. 100 people he killed. And right at the end, he decided to change his life. And Allah took him right then. He was forgiven. And so there is no guarantee in either sense. May Allah allow us and give us istiqamah, ameen. He allows us to be people who die on the kalima la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He allows us to be people who continue to work and hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that's all we have. All we have is hope in Allah's mercy. Just a quick reminder, inshallah, every Sunday, the brothers, they go on what we call jola. So, mashallah, many of us are coming to the masjid, but think back on how you started coming to the masjid. Somebody brought you, somebody reminded you, somebody told you. And so, mashallah, there's brothers here, my uncle who's here, and who make the effort weekly to go into the community and to bring people to the masjid. And this is a noble cause. I remember when we were in your madrasa, we used to do this quite often. When you bring people to the masjid, subhanAllah, you bring them one time and now they're hooked, right? They come from one program, mashallah, they listen to Imam Sahib every single day. They love the masjid now. And the reward goes back to you. So inshallah, about an hour or so before Asr, they go out to the different homes in the community, reminding people. You'll be surprised how many Muslims there are in the community who just don't know about the masjid or don't care about the masjid. And all they need is a small nudge, right? A small reminder. And so make that effort. You can coordinate with Brother Salahuddin or Brother Uzair. Inshallah, they make the effort every single week before Salat al-Asr. And inshallah, Ramadan will be great because we have this program, so you can bring them to here, inshallah. The goal is to strengthen our connection with the masjid and to bring other people to the masjid as well. Because what's better than succeeding in life than bringing other people along with you? So let's make the niyyah, inshallah, make the effort. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين جزاك الله خير. Oh yeah, and then inshallah for this program, there's a registration online. Just request to please fill that out, inshallah. I have some materials, some like lecture notes and stuff. And so if you want access to those, inshallah, please just register and then I can hand them over next week, inshallah. They're finished. If you find touches, I don't want to give you a faulty product. Jazakallah khair. Wa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We can spend the rest of the time, inshallah, in dua and ibadah. Inshallah, Maghrib will be in a few minutes.